Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to And She Thrived, which serves to hold space for Muslim divorced women. And we also are now expanding our topics on health, wellness, healing, relationships to all women in general. We are very blessed and fortunate today to have Dr. Mazen Attasi today with us. And he is a doctor of naturopathy and the founder of Forward to Health, a holistic wellness clinic and educational initiative based in Chicago. He practices traditional naturopathy and homeopathy with a focus in somatic trauma therapy and psychosomatic disorders. He has studied Islamic disciplines with traditional scholars and has transmission from Hakim Archuleta. Dr. Mazen holds a BS in biology and an ND in naturopathic medicine. He teaches the module on Islamic medicine, vitalism, and the Hikmah model on the Diploma in Islamic Psychology program at Cambridge Muslim College. Welcome, Dr. Mazen. Thank you for joining us today.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Sumaya. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. So we have this topic of trauma that keeps on coming up, and a lot of us experience this trauma, whether it would be either going through a divorce or wanting to get married and being unable to, wanting to conceive, not being able to, being bereaved, whether it's experiences from childhood, whether it is almost like an international trauma, the pain and suffering of our brothers and sisters all over the Muslim world, and we feel that. And so I've heard you mention that trauma is an overwhelming experience, and you also talk about big T trauma and small t trauma. If you don't mind telling us something about that, please, as a start.
Bismillah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa wala. Yeah, thank you, alhamdulillah. It's nice to be able to have a platform to share with kindred spirits around this really important topic. So trauma is basically anything that overwhelms the organism, our systems, our being. It could be anything. It could be vicarious. It could be direct experience. So, I mean, just here, it's mid-December or end of December 2023 right now, and we're still kind of lingering in the vicarious experience of genocide. And that has been a trauma for many people, right? So it doesn't even have to be you experiencing it, but some sort of overload that happens. And from there, what happens is certain strategies, certain adaptations kick in. Some of these are learned, and some of these are maybe we can say wired. They're more constitutional. And perhaps some of these are like related to like one's destiny and one's innate makeup, and the fact of life that Allah is just testing us here. Allah is testing us in this world. And the way that tests oftentimes are set up are through traumas. So that's why I like to say trauma is a fact of life. And rarely does anyone, I don't believe anybody, to be honest with you, leaves childhood unscathed. There's always something, whether there's too much of something, like a smothering helicopter mother that doesn't let the child roam free or something like that, or um, the father that abandons, or anything in between, right? And the child has to like learn how to be in the world with that deficiency or excess and compensate accordingly. So all these things are part of the traumatic landscape or the trauma landscape and the trauma reality, right? It's just a fact of life. And so part of the Muslim and the human experience, ultimately, it's not a Muslim thing, right? But part of the human experience is really to reconcile with what has happened to us, what is continuing to happen within us, and what is my next step. And what is interesting about that, and I'll say one more thing before bringing it back to you, is that trauma, maybe we can actually clarify the definition a little bit further and say, not only is it something that overwhelms us, but it's something that we don't digest. Because, hypothetically, if we were to experience a big shock in life, and then we were to fully process and digest and move it through our system, and out, that would not technically be a trauma because the trauma is not the event itself. What is trauma? Trauma are the changes, the adaptations that happen in the wake of the event, after the event. And I think it's a really critical thing. And I think that's important because it highlights agency, right? That we are not just passive victims of things, right? Things do happen and and that we should be, able to name things as they are. You did that, and I demand my rights or justice or someone help me with this. But ultimately, it's like, do I live in that or do I do my inner work and be with that pain and be with that grief and be with that fear and that anger oftentimes that gets exposed but suppressed? And then reconcile all these different energies and faculties within, which Allah gave us. Allah gave us anger. Allah gave us grief. Allah gave us fear. These are all energies and physiological patterns and faculties that we have to be able to show up fully in life, but they get dampened and suppressed or amplified artificially in these trauma responses. I don't want to be responding to trauma my whole life. I want to be. And she thrived. I want to thrive. Thriving isn't about adaptations. It's about being free in the moment, being fully connected to oneself, to Allah, to one's heart.
So it seems that we spend our entire lives trying to get over trauma. And that I also really appreciate what you mentioned about not being stuck in victimhood, because this is
Mm-hmm.
the thing, and this is exactly what we aim to do here, is that to not, we've all
Alhamdulillah.
had pain, we've all had suffering, but to not wallow in it, to take responsibility and to find a way,
Right.
From what I understand, you're saying is that it's so important that in terms of navigating through trauma is to actually really stay connected to the present moment and to find those kind of, what would you say, like modalities or ways
Mm,
to almost channel it so it doesn't get stuck, right?
absolutely.
I've also heard you mention, if you'd like to comment on that, that in your opinion, you are more inclined to believe that the small T trauma is actually more impactful than the big T trauma.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So let's define these terms first. Yeah. So the big T trauma in the trauma literature, and I think maybe I believe it's shifting a little bit now, but the big T trauma you'll find in books like Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine and In an Unspoken Voice and Bessel, Bessel van der Kolk's book on titles evading me right now. His famous book, Bessel van der Kolk.
They can look it up.
The Body Keeps the Score,
Yes.
or the classic, right? So in those books, really trauma, very early pioneers of the trauma space, they define big T trauma as shock traumas. These big events that happen that rock us, that come out of nowhere, like a car accident, like being jumped, God forbid, on the street, um, any type of one-off, like a natural disaster, like an earthquake, you know. I mean, I was recently speaking with a friend who was in Morocco helping with the earthquake or the landslides or whatever happened in Morocco this past year. And he was saying that he was speaking with people on the ground and asking, what do you want people in the rest of the world to know about what happened here or what's happening here? And the man said, I just want everyone to know that the day before this happened, no one anticipated anything. We were just living normal lives. And it made me weep. I mean, it just struck me because like I'm living my normal life right now. I get what that means. And then it's all of a sudden everything's gone next day. Everything's gone. Like, see, that's a shock trauma. That's a big, like, what do we do with, yeah, your whole world getting turned upside down out of nowhere. I mean, people get acclimated to injustice, like the Gazans. They're born in the fight. People like us, we're not in that specific type of big fight, right? We also have our own fights. But that's classic big T trauma, the shock traumas, the big kind of nervous system jolt traumas. And then little t traumas are the developmental traumas, childhood traumas, these things that affect us in our early environment, right? These little or big, but these subtle kind of imbalances in the family dynamics and so on and so forth. So, someone described it as, it's the trauma that you breathe. It's the air that you breathe when you're young. It's just that, just the workaholic father or the doting, self-sacrificing mother, or whatever, all these types of things. And those are all imbalances, right? And that's all transgenerational stuff usually too. It's not like they just woke up one day and started doing it. It's like they're doing it as a result of their environment and their upbringing, as a result of their upbringing, which is blah, blah, blah. And maybe, there was a shock trauma at the beginning of it, but it just cascades through time. So that's little t trauma. And what you're alluding to is how I like to actually flip it. Because the big T, what they call the shock traumas, if they occur to people who have reconciled with their developmental traumas, they're more stable. They won't freak. They won't scatter. I like to use the word of scatter or fragment. Because when trauma hits, the effect it has on us is that we tend to dissociate in some way. And it's not like a mental disorder and give it a code and give it a diagnosis and give it a medication. No, it's a psychobiological dissociation from the qalb.
Okay,
The
so
qalb.
we use this word dissociation. Could you unpack that? What does it mean?
So dissociation means like separating from something. And so if we can decide, maybe decide to use an Islamic psychology model, you see that in the classic Ghazalian model. Imam al-Ghazali, of course, has a model that most of Islamic psychology now is built on. He has these concepts of the nafs and the qalb and the ruh and the aql, for example. Now, for now, let's just focus on the nafs and the qalb for now. The nafs being kind of the personality, the acquired personality. That's not the essential self. The essential self is the qalb, is the heart. And that's where the fitra is, which is like our whole principial nature, our essence, our real self. That's in the qalb. And the qalb, I'll add one more layer to it, is embodied. So there's this pure, whole, embodied reality to each of us. That's in the heart, right? Because the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, of course, that you all know, verily in the body there is an organ. If it's sound, the whole body is sound. If it's corrupt, the whole body is corrupt. Verily it is the heart. So the heart is in the body. So that is the true self. And that's where we are by default. When we're any type of healthy psyche, healthy person has access to this part of them. Usually not 100% because that's very difficult, but maybe 80, 90%. They're more regulated. They have access to their hearts, to their love, to their boundaries, to all these different things that come from being a healthy, mature adult. And then the nafs is this ego. It's the mask, it's the personality. It's something that's separate from the qalb. And so we kind of dissociate into it. And this is why you see a child, who, when they're newborn or like 6 months, they're much more playful and ruddy and they're able to say no and do stuff. And they're not overthinking. They're not neurotic like we as adults can be. They're not just being and responding and just expressing themselves. And then maybe the environment's like very kind of good, bad, black and white. It's not right. It's not appropriate, No, no, don't do that. Don't, saying no a lot to the child. Now they become to, oh, I want to do it. I mean, there's something natural about doing it, but there's some resistance to that, and mom is frowning at me, or dad is threatening with his something. The energy is off, right? They're not even thinking cognitively. It's just the vibe for them. The energy of the dynamic is becoming threatening or something. So they move away from themselves and that naturalness into now being what they deem to be a proper, appropriate, or maybe even safe. So I won't speak. I won't do. I'd like to play with my friends, but I don't know if I'm safe or if that's a good thing or if I'll earn the wrath of someone or something. So I'm gonna turn off. That's one strategy. Another strategy can be I'm gonna hypercompensate. I'm gonna overdo it. I'm gonna be really grandiose and big and aggressive, and that's a strategy. That's not someone really totally in their heart or totally in their boundaries. They're scared in that. They're not well in that. So that's what I mean by dissociation. I'll speak for myself, right? In my kind of perspective and what I teach and what I work with clinically, that when we talk about dissociation, I mean dissociation from the embodied heart, the true self, into the nafs, the strategy, right? And I do have like an hypothesis that the nafs actually is a function of trauma in its inception, whether it's like from the parent or the environment or from birth or something, like there's some trigger that kicks us out of the heart, which is, this fully saturated thing in the body and present. You said this word present in the moment. Of course, that's what we want. We want full beingness in our totality. Like that is, I mean, what is wilaya more than that? Sainthood, if you will, which is like the peak of health when it's really done right and when it's really real, right? Not just be, oh, he's a wali or she's a waliya or something. Like really, really what wilaya. It's like this peace and sakina and integrity and embodiedness and this open-heartedness in the present moment. So anything other than that tends to be a type of dissociation. And that's the subject of our of this work.
Thank you for clarifying. I think you touched on
Yeah.
this briefly, but I'm curious so what happens when something like a big traumatic thing happens, for example, a breakup.
Mhm.
And so that's not the big T. But what it does is it brings back all of this other stuff of the small T trauma of like
Exactly.
how I'm unworthy, I'm worthless, I'm disposable. Um,
Mhm.
this was bound to happen. So it's so traumatic because it's like a combination of the big T and the small T stuff.
True.
Be a way forward for such a person because sometimes
Yeah.
it feels impossible.
Well, it's I think all of us can resonate with that. In some way, what Allah will do for all of us is gently invite us to do the work. And our work is typically clear for those of us that look in or get some help and have someone can, be able to reflect back objectively, like what's going on for one. Because we have a lot of smoke and mirrors inside. There's a lot of stuff that comes up when you start to look inside, like, what are you doing? Don't do this. This is scary. Let me just take care of this. I've been protecting you forever. Let me just take care of this. You go about your business. It's working. But really, it's not working because you're stuck in a vicious cycle that you can't escape. And here's another big T trauma that resonates with all the little t stuff and amplifies it. And now you're stuck in a mess that you've experienced 4 times before. So it's not actually not working, Nafs, right? But being able to be clear then, like, here's what, if someone comes to me in clinic and either I know them from before, like I know their pattern, and they come back and say, "Ah, like I've done it again." Like, all right. I mean, you feel like you're guilty or something. Alhamdulillah, this is what happens. I'm glad you're back. Let's work on this, right? Because the nafs is amara bisu in this language, the Quran, right? It's compelling to evil. But here, evil doesn't really work in the clinical space. We're not talking morally, right? But it's compelling towards disbalance or compelling towards separation or dissociation from the heart. That's what it compels to. The nafs compels to dissociation from the heart. And so it's constantly doing that. And it'll use circumstances around it. And Shaitan's whispering to it because Shaitan, of course, is a master psychologist, master psychologist. And that's why he doesn't like people like me. 'Cause I point that out to people, like you should know yourself because you're being used by the Shaitan who's playing you very much. Allah. So the first step is being able to recognize the pattern, right? We don't even work. I know the present moment is like this big shock, but I put that on the side burner for a moment and just recognize what's also present is the pattern. And it's almost like more present than what just happened, right? And that could take some time to really be able to archaeologically dig that out and clarify and polish it. Like, do you see it? And look, no, no, don't interpret it. Don't analyze it. Don't go back in story. This is because of this or that. We'll come back to that later. But right now, do you see the pattern? Do you see how you self-sabotage? Do you see how you set yourself up? Right? And just being able to recognize that can be a tremendous shift for people. Because really, what I like to say about ilm nafs, which is the term we use for psychology in Islam. Ilm nafs, it's the knowledge of the nafs. So this is about knowledge of the nafs. And what's the knowledge of the nafs as we're defining? It's the knowledge of these patterns, these dissociative patterns from the qalb, these strategies and adaptations, the hypercompensations, the pride-based hypercompensations, and the hypocompensations, the shame and the guilt and the unworthiness and the brokenness, and I'm not good enough, and I'm not gonna get, and I'll never get. That kind of language is hypocompensating. And there's strategies around it. And so getting a sense of that is so powerful. So that way, at least there's a part of you, which is the heart and the intellect, that begins to track it in real time. You may not be able to fully move out of it, and that takes time, right? It may take the rest of our lives, just so we frame it accordingly. This is not a weekend healing seminar. This is actually the spirit of the meaning of our lives. It's to heal and to grow and to develop the nafs from its lowest self, its lowest form and iteration, and nafs al-ammara bis-su' through the different stages of nafs al-lawwama and nafs al-mutma'inna. That's the function of our lives. And so this trauma work is deep. It is meaningful. It is important. And it saves. It redeems us. And it sets us up for virtue and freedom, meaning from the pattern, from what happened to us. And it breaks the pattern so that we can, have healthy families, inshallah ta'ala, moving forward that are free from this pattern. I mean, it's tremendous work. Like, and you free the whole line almost, like, inshallah, because our ancestors are in the barzakh, and they're aware and they know that these things happened. And so we can free them, if you will, by just shifting the transgenerational pattern. It's amazing. And that should be our intention, inshallah ta'ala. It's tremendous work because it's shackle. It's much of that are the nooses and the shackles that shaitan uses.
So my big question is going to be, obviously.
Tell me.
Well, then how does it happen? Because it sounds like,
How does it happen?
like you say, doing the
How
work.
does what happen?
How does one address that trauma? How does one make, because you've definitely stated observation. So you said observing the cycle, the pattern, and that gets to the root of it. Now you have it. I don't know if you're able to go into more detail about what does it look like to gradually move from that base level of the nafs and inshallah, hopefully to that, the nafs al-mutma'inna.
Well, yeah, we mentioned tracking, observing. We mentioned knowledge of the pattern. I mean, we managed, inshallah ta'ala. I mean, I do encourage some modicum of work so that processing can happen. It's difficult to process ourselves without having been shown how to process. Right? Even people like me, I'll tell you, who do this for a living, day in, day out. I mean, I'm in this space all day, every day for years. And yet, when stuff happens for me, I have to call my guy. Because there's something about suhbah and something about mirroring. And we were just together at a retreat last week, weren't we? And talking about the sacred nature of companionship and the mirroring that happens and the blessings of Allah that come down. So I believe that's true in the clinical space as well. And so having a type of relate or like a really good friend, maybe, or especially if they've done their work, not just have ideas of trauma and psychobabble kind of talk. Forgive me for that, from Instagram and TikTok. But really kind of having done the work, maybe read a couple of books, like really interested. Someone like that, someone grounded, where you can actually just give back and forth and you can be real with one another.
I was going to say somebody very objective, because not that friend who's just like the yes man. Like,
Yes, girl,
oh,
of
they both,
course. He's such a
yeah,
jerk.
exactly. Because that doesn't, then that actually just feeds your own nafs, and it
Absolutely.
doesn't make you grow in any way. Yeah.
And that can be helpful maybe that first night or the first day or two that happens.
Mm.
But then when you want to do work, it actually becomes very counterproductive. Having someone that can check you and give you nasiha, النصح لكل Muslim. That's a very beautiful friend, you know. But it's about processing, and processing happens in the body because much of the taint, if you will, of the artifacts, the energies that get locked in trauma are in the body. We have these rigidifications that happen, oftentimes we feel it in our jaws and our shoulders, in our guts, like we feel these tensions, these holding patterns. And these hold us in like that dissociative state out of the heart. Because the moment we start to move through these and start to feel energy kind of flowing again, your heart expands. People feel, oh, I can breathe again. Like the tension wasn't in the chest, the tension was in the legs or something, or in the core. But once that released, the heart opens. Because it keeps us away from the heart, this holding patterns. So there's a lot of different ways of doing that. And then there's somatic work. Somatic work is somatic psychotherapy, which understands that and tries to bring you not only into the body to be in the present moment, because the body is always in the present moment, but also helping you process those sensations of trauma, the fixations of trauma. But there's also things like homeopathy that helps a lot. I use a lot of homeopathy with my patient. I tend to do both homeopathy and somatic work. Acupuncture can be amazing. I do encourage someone to get traditional acupuncturist, no, not someone who's like, because now people are doing like weekend or like 1 month certificates, and they're like PTs or chiropractors, and they just learn points. They don't learn the whole system, and that's the bastardization of acupuncture. Acupuncture is elegant and old and beautiful, thousands of years old, like 4,000 years old, like incredibly old. Subhanallah. So that helps, right? But it's really what I believe the most helpful thing, because even acupuncture and homeopathy is like, okay, like I have wounds, like give me something, doc, kind of energy. And I can, inshallah, give something. But if the fundamental, intention or objective of this work is that you learn about yourself and you experience things fully and then you grow through it, the homeopathy isn't the only thing. Like the somatic work is what really allows you to feel into and move through. And oftentimes people can't distinguish between the actual energies of trauma. So, for example, let me give you an example. We have this concept of primary emotion and secondary emotion. Okay. So let's say somebody is, um, like you mentioned, like broken, shame-based, un feeling unworthy. They're in that state, right? What's the emotion that usually comes with that? What's the natural emotion in that space?
What, that comes with shame?
Yeah. When you're in that shame, broken, melancholic, kind of sad, I just said kind of
Yeah, it's people would say I'm
sad, depressed,
yeah,
grief, kind of, right? That's the energy, kind of
melancholic, depression, all of that.
melancholic depression, sadness. It's that energy, right? And so, but like an unsophisticated approach would be just to, okay, be with the grief, right? Be with the grief and and like almost do that for like 10, 20 hours of sessions, like just being with it, processing it, artistically rendering it, which can be helpful. I'm not saying not helpful. But for me, I'm like, where's the anger? Is the sadness actually primary? Primary means the real deep emotion. The secondary is the cover. It's the veil. Even the emotions get complex and covered. So sometimes the primary emotion is anger, actually, but there isn't space for it, or it feels threatening, or your confrontation feels overwhelming. And so I don't know how to do that without burning the bridge. It's like if I go there, I like rage. So I'd rather just not go there. So we don't give ourselves access to that energy. And so we just stay in grief. And that's what this, maybe your trauma-informed practitioner can help you process the grief, but you're not going deep enough. Where is anger? Because you need to have anger if you're going to be well and come out of this fully, for example. Or flip side.
I was just going to say that. Do you think it's always that way? Because I'm reflecting and I'm thinking what I've noticed in my personal situations when I feel anger, actually underneath is grief.
Good.
Like you can just then break down and it's actually you want to weep because it's linked to some kind of unmet need that results in like this shuja, like this anger or this ghadab that's coming out. But
Mm,
actually underneath that, it's just like a little sad child, you know?
exactly.
They can
Totally
be
possible.
opposites.
They can
Okay.
totally be opposite. Oh yeah, yeah. No, no. Anger can be secondary to the primary grief,
Mm.
sadness. Absolutely. And that's why you see, like when I mentioned earlier, the hyper compensation, the hypocompensation, that's typically how those work. In the hypercompensated state, no, people that are really bully-like, grandiose, arrogant, kind of aggressive. We all know that, and too, even like pop culture and movies and stuff, like those people inside are like broken little puppies, right? Little children inside that. And then the person who is really small and bullied, usually on the receiving end of bullying and stuff like that. And there's movies around this, the bully kind of steps up to the loser kid at the lunch table, and then inside of him is just fire. But he's has all his complex around it. And then the bully goes too far one day, and then the loser kid beats him up because he just taps into all that anger.
Mm.
And then of course he gets blamed for that because it wasn't healthy. And so what's the journey of the hypocompensated person is like accessing anger and learning to be with it and not act on it and just have it be there. Have that full faculty flowing through him. And what we call in the Hakims call al-quwwa al-ghadabiyya, the anger faculty or the anger energy. You can't be a healthy human being and not have that. You have to have that. Same way we want to have, our liver physiologically functioning, our kidney physiologically, functioning, our metabolism, our hormone regulation, our body temperature, everything has to be there. Emotionally, all your emotions should be inside of you. And we can have different constitutional kind of amounts of the energies. Some people are more intense than others. Like Sayyidina Umar, I like to give the example of Sayyidina Umar, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who is like constitutionally like very, initially like very choleric, very angry, very outward with his anger. And yet at the end of his life, you find that he was much more balanced and there was grooves in his cheek from the tears, and he was much more open to being in his heart, and being at service. And it's a very beautiful arc that you can kind of see in the life of Sayyidina Umar. Um, mashallah. But we all have those arcs. And there's not one kind of archetypal journey that looks like. It looks different. There's different iterations of it. And the only way that we can know what we need to do is by, I believe, having a friend or having a clinician, someone that we trust, that can reflect back to us our pattern and help us process and be with those emotions, identify what's lacking within us. Like once you're really in someone's inner world, you'll notice like there's a lot of something and there's not a lot of something else. And just being curious around that. Like, I mean, I'll be with somebody who's just like devastated and broken, and I'm never good enough. And they have this perfectionistic tendency as well, usually. These high standards, I'm never good enough. It's like, where'd those standards come from, anyways? It's like they have all these complexes and stuff. So helping people just see things and break them down. Eventually, it's like, where is your izzah? Where is your anger? Where's your be? I know you're like a moral person. I know You're a strong person. I know you believe the truth is the truth and right is right and wrong is wrong. Where is that anger? I don't say it like that, but that's what I'm like holding. Like, and the moment that, that becomes available for them, you can see them just like, I'll even say like the room feels my vision feels more clear, the colors are more rich, my chest feels more open, I feel the shoulders drop. There's all these somatic kind of signs that they've now entered the heart space. They're more settled. And then just resourcing them, like, this is normal for you. This is the real you know, giving people resources like that and felt, and then maybe artistically render this one, not the sad moping strategy. And thank God for our strategies. Alhamdulillah, I'm not criticizing the strategy, but this is the real you. What does this feel like? It feels like a lion breaking out of the cage. Ooh, can you please draw that? And I'll have people draw it and they'll show me. I'm like, put that on your wall, please. And then it was have this beautiful rendering, their own rendering, their own expression of what it feels to be in their embodied hearts. See, that's the real art. I don't want the art of the brokenness. I want the art of the lion energy.
So on grief, would you say that grief is a result
Mm.
of trauma?
No, not necessarily. There's a great book on this, on grief, probably the best book on grief I've ever read, which is Francis Weller's The Wild Edge of Sorrow. Talks about the five gates of grief, the five different types of grief, not stages of grief, right? Uh, Denial, acceptance, and anger. He talks about the five different types of grief. So, like grief, in one sense, um, is like having something and then losing it. There's like a grief to that, right? You have something, you lose it. But what's the grief of wanting something and never having it, for example? Right? And there's three others, I won't get into that, but like grief is complex. It's not just trauma. And, you know, what grief can be ultimately is just your love. That's that's meeting the present moment with a difficult circumstance, right? Usually, like when we have something and we lose it, there's a trauma in that, the loss in that, but it's the love that shifts into grief there. Like when, for example, you lose your child, God forbid anyone loses their child, but someone loses a child and you grieve that child, like the Prophet ﷺ grieved for that famous, beautiful story when he's burying his son, his 1-year-old son, Ibrahim, and he's in the grave. In one report, he's actually in the grave, putting him down, and he's weeping. And Sayyidina uh, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, Sayyidina Abdurrahman ibn Auf, one of the great Sahaba, right? One of the 10 promised Jannah, turns to him and says, Anta ya Rasulullah, you, O Messenger of God, like you weep. You're the messenger of God. Like these are human things. He says in this beautiful line, very famous, says, this is rahmah. This is mercy. Verily the eye sheds tears, and verily the heart feels grief. He's like, and he's naming here the emotion, the grief, and the broken heart, the somatic, the physical somatic experience of that state. It's fully in that state. But we don't say anything that displeases Allah. Why did you take him from me? Ya Allah, he's my only baby. You've taken so much. Give me one boy. He didn't say any of that. Why would he say that? He's lost boys, before that, right? But we don't say anything that displeases. But we're with the state fully. And he turns to Ibrahim and he said, his shrouded dead son. He says, we verily at your loss, O Ibrahim, our hearts are broken. Speaking to his son. I mean, he's totally saturated in that hot, in that state. He's totally there. Is there trauma there? Probably, I'm sure. It never gets old, It never gets like, oh yeah, I lost a kid. It's a deeply cut wound. And yet, was it a trauma for him? Again, this trauma of like not being able to move through it. I don't believe that. He was fully allowing himself to be there while it was there for him and connected to his body and connected to Allah in a beautiful way and share it with people. I mean, he's validating all of our grief when he does that. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And of course, no one knows the states of the Prophet. And we have to also just say that, the prophets are a different order of being. But these are just indications, inshallah ta'ala, that we can use to invite us to our own embodiment, even though we'll never know the states of the Prophet or any of the prophets, alayhim salam. But grief is, it's a state. It's a state just like we see injustice in Palestine and we get angry. Angry. Is that trauma? I mean, maybe. It's a traumatic situation that's going on, but ultimately, it's our love, right? Our love for justice, our love for our brothers and sisters, our love for the Holy Land. It's our love. The anger is love, the sign of a living heart, and these states will come. Any heart that's alive, like what Imam Junaid, who said, one of the great masters of the Sufi path, he said, the sincere seeker will have 40 states a day, 40 different states a day. Because when the heart's alive, it's always responding to what's coming up. Morning time is, inshallah, it's safe, warm breakfast, leave the house, it's cold. Oh, it's cold. It's someone, almost hits you on the way to work. God, jeez, for God's sake, And then you get to work and there's someone dumps a whole thing of paperwork on your desk and then someone confides in you maybe in the break room about something that happened over the weekend that was really beautiful. I got engaged. Oh, I'm so happy for you. And then you go back to work and it's just like constant and you go into prayer and just content and talking to Allah and just constantly changing. And that's the sign of a living heart, just responding to what happens. So is grief trauma? I wouldn't say that. Can it come with trauma? Yeah, totally. Totally. The same way that like anger comes with, injustice. It's the faculty that responds to injustice. Anything, anger is an organic emotion that comes without prompting, without even intending it, as a result of witnessing some transgression, something morally reprehensible, something abusive, something wrong. It's natural, right? You don't have to prompt it. So the same way when you see something heartbreaking, sad, right? There's grief, but it's a natural response. A natural response. But what there is also is like shame. And shame can be grief that hasn't been processed, or shame that hasn't been balanced by anger, and so on and so forth. And so that needs that chronic, anything chronic, anything you get stuck in is something that is out of balance. But the state of grief in the moment when witnessing something or in a state of loss is a healthy thing, and I would not pathologize that.
Do you have advice for somebody who's in an immediate state of grief? What's the recommendation, what they could do
Mm,
straight away?
mm. Well, there's a homeopathic remedy I like to give. And I encourage people to have homeopathic kits in their homes because there's certain things that are just so easy to dose, like arnica for bruises and apis for bee stings, stuff like that. So I would give a homeopathic Ignatia for any type of immediate kind of grief or overwhelm that helps move the energy. Because a lot of people they don't work with it. You know, when someone like you hear about a woman who may lose her husband, and then a week or 2 weeks later, or vice versa, you know, husband loses his wife, and then a week or two or a month later, they die of a heart attack or something. That's the grief. Allah Ta'ala alam, but like typically the pattern is that's just if they were given Ignatia and someone was to actually ask them, hey, have you been connecting to your heart, or are you just sad but disconnected? Um, that could help them too. But when something big happens, I mean, the first thing, if you had Ignatia, you could take Ignatia. But I encourage people to be outside. I totally encourage people to not enclose themselves. Because for me, the house becomes, it's like the Nafs. The house becomes like a fortress. And we can get literally locked in and suffocated in this fortress. So my first invitation is to, okay, if you don't want to be with people, if you don't have a safe space you can go to and maybe a good friend or family member or something like that, or spiritual community, then be outside. Don't wallow indoors. Don't sleep outside, you know, you can come inside and sleep, but be outside, get some fresh air, and just, you know, when we're in those states, life slows down, doesn't it? Life slows down because the rhythm and the speed of the body is much slower than our minds and especially the modern psyche of what's next and doom scrolling and Amazon buying and you know just oh that energy is like whoa like I mean we probably seem like like nutcases to people that are more fitly like just nutcases, but the body's rhythm is much slower. That's why time slows down. We're going through cupped constriction, time slows down, but we're also just being more present with what is in the body. And then just noticing things, slowing down, being with what is. You know, I encourage people to use, um, excuse me, the senses to connect. So, for example, burning oud, aromatics, and certain things, you know, can be uplifting and certain things can be grounding. But using oud, scent, um, or oils, you know, you can use sound, music. Sometimes music can be so, and I'm not saying pop music and stuff like that. You know what I mean by music, right?
Pure music.
Uh, yeah. Is it pure music?
Mhm.
Yeah, pure music, you know, like for example, I like soundtracks, like movie soundtracks, like Hans Zimmer soundtracks, right? That's what I love, Hans Zimmer. So I have a Hans Zimmer playlist. That's just pretty much always on. If I'm not in sessions, it's just on. And it helps me. It helps me. And it's very emotional and it's very kind of grounding for me and it helps me just connect with myself. I like that kind of stuff a lot. And music has been a friend my whole life. So I'm open to yeah, pure music. It's good. Like pure music that helps you feel. Because music is very emotional. I encourage prayer. When Allah sends us these difficulties, these challenges, they're always with one intention as far as He's concerned. Allahu Alam, which is that we turn to Him. We come back to Him in all the states. That's what He wants us to do in every state. That's how we grow. So whether we are in bust, meaning expansion, joy, pleasure, that we are so grateful to Allah. Like this, Allah, like I know I've been in different states. This is a special state. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. Thank you so much for this gift. Even if it's transient, I'm so grateful for having a good day. Thank you, because I know how it can be. And then when you're having a bad day or a series of bad days, Ya Allah, I mean, you can say thank you for that too, but that's a very high state to be thankful for the cup. But Just, Ya Allah, I know this is from you. And I know that you are with me. I know that you're testing me. And I want you to know that I know and I love you and I trust you. And I'll be patient, be patient with what is and just guide me and show me what you want me to do and help me move out of this and find my strength and find the teaching here. What's my teaching here, Ya Allah? Don't make this go to waste. I don't want this to be wasted and I have to wait 6 months for the next teaching opportunity. I do want to grow and I do want to learn. What are you teaching me? Help me find it. I want to grow. See, that's bullseye. That's exactly how you engage that state. More or less. You don't have to use my language, but that's the energy of it. You just come back to Allah and just, Ya Allah, I have nothing. I heard one of our teachers say recently, like one of the best states, just general states. And I have to be careful the way, and I'll clarify it. Um, to meet Allah to be with Allah constantly in is brokenness. Now, what's brokenness mean? Does it mean to be I'm not worthy, I'm good for nothing, living in shame? No, absolutely not. Brokenness being I'm not chuffed with myself. Like, Ya Allah, I know even if you were to be like Mr. or Mrs. Perfect, I know it's not good enough. I know there's always more I could be doing. And I say that not out of self-shame and judgment, but out of just recognition of who you are and what you're worthy of. And it's nothing's good enough, but it's my attempt and I love you and that's the relationship, this brokenness. You're humble with Allah Ta'ala.
And then Dr. Mazen, I've heard you mention the shadow self and facing it. Could you tell us about that, please?
Yeah. So in terms of the shadow self, this is what I equate typically to the nafs, as we've been describing the nafs, the shadow self, the dissociative self. The shadow, of course, is a part of you that you can't see, but operates from the darkness, right? It's the automatic part of you. It's a part of you that kind of sets the tempo and sets the general dynamic of your personality and your relationships and expectations and assumptions of the world and all that. That's the shadow self, right? And it's typically a result of trauma, a result of our early experiences. And so it's limited. It's limited. And it's more of like a safety and survival kind of strategy than it is something that's really correspondent to reality. Because are there threats? Are there things to be aware of? Are there things to discern in the world? Of course. But does that mean that we live in a bubble, quote unquote? To live in a kind of minimal exposure, outward kind of interfacing and allowing, giving, limited giving, limited receiving kind of posture. No, that's not the hearts of the prophets. That's not the hearts of the saints. The hearts of healthy people are ones that are grounded and open and trusting, but boundaried and integrated. And if something was to thwart that balance or challenge the balance, they could meet it directly. Kind of like I have this image of, again, Sayyidina Umar, I love Sayyidina Umar, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, but it's like when he's walking and the shaitan is like, not only like, you know, like if they're evading him. How we talk about like how we burn bukhud and say our clothes and the Al Kursi, like please, like don't come to us. They're not afraid of him, like how, why? Right? Because he's so integrated. He's such a balanced, strong person, and not just in his physical strength or his even emotional aggression. It was more of this balance and this spirituality, and all the Sahaba were like that. And the Prophet ﷺ was the best of them, best of creation. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what's interesting about the shadow, actually, on the note of the Prophet, and I'll end it here. We can talk more about this at a later time, inshallah ta'ala. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is reported to not have had a shadow. He's reported to not have had a shadow. When the sun shone on him, he didn't have a shadow on the ground. Everyone else did. He did not. Of course, the ulama and the awliya will say, oh, this is because that he's more luminous. He casts a shadow on the sun, like he's more luminous than the sun, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But also within this frame, I think it's really interesting talking about the shadow self. Like he had no shadow. He was fully integrated. He was fully conscious. Nothing was operating from the depths beyond what he was aware of, right? He was fully saturated into himself. There was nothing, no part that was like, like in Lion King, when Simba goes out with his father and says, "This is all my kingdom, but beyond this, it's like dark lands. Like we don't go there. You never go there." That's shadow. Forgot what he called it in the movie, but like that's the image I have of the shadow. It's like that part over there. It's like it's real. It's part of my kingdom, but there's this like elephant carcasses and death and destruction and scary things, and we don't go there. You don't go there. Of course, what does Simba do? He goes there, right? Because we go there. We oftentimes go there in our teenage years, and we don't know what to do with it, and we get stuck because no one initiates us into knowing how to navigate those energies and those experiences.
So what would be your conclusion in that? Like, do we face it? It
Of
comes up
course, we,
out
we
there?
have to bring the light to it, and that's what the work is all about. We don't we eradicate the cobwebs and the things that live down in the basement in that shadow place with the light of knowledge. Knowledge is a nur, as Imam Ghazali talks about. It is a light. And so as you become more aware of it, I mean, even the smallest candle can light up a room, a dark room. The smallest of candles makes at least the contours of the general um, fixings in the room visible. So you just bring the light in until you're fully luminous, and then you cast shadows on planets and stars. Inshallah.
Thank you. Lastly, some might argue that delving into the field of wellness and self-help and all of that, which is really popular these days, can lead to
Mhm.
one becoming very self-centered, narcissistic, self-absorbed.
Yes,
What
it's
do you
true. No, it's true. It can definitely happen. And that's why, you know, if we find people, like for me, um, look, the healing space is rife with broken people. And this is not something new, you know. The healers are oftentimes, the idea of the wounded healer, right? Who comes into healing space? People that are broken. That's just very typical, right? And so those people typically don't do their work. And now there's so many ideas about, okay, identity, um, you know, um, trauma, narcissism, what's toxic, not toxic, the masculine, toxic masculinity. All these ideas now, it becomes very much fodder for further imbalancing, actually. It's not really balanced. And, and this is why typically I don't encourage people to work with non-Muslims unless you can identify that they're balanced. Like my guy I mentioned earlier is balanced. I like him. He's not Muslim, but he's a good therapist. He has a good heart. And he's open to Islam, and I'm working on him, inshallah ta'ala. But I'm comfortable with that personally. But I don't recommend everyone to do that, especially if you haven't done, this is your first time doing work. I encourage you to find someone who's Muslim, who's balanced, who's done their work. And it's tough to gauge that. It's the problem. There's a lot of problems, even in the certified licensed therapist space. It's not like just the coaches and new age people,
Mm.
even the clinicians and the doctors. And it's just the whole healing space from A to Z, right? Is
If I
rife
might,
with this complication. Mm.
if I might interject, even a person merely being Muslim is not sufficient, because what I
No,
find that's very scary is that you get, like, everyone and their mother is now becoming a coach, and you see these people who literally become like ulama, like shuyukh to their clientele, and
true.
they've got such immense trust and faith in in their coach who has probably not even studied any of the traditional sciences with a solid teacher. And that's actually, I find, quite dangerous. So I guess I'm just wondering that then that's the one issue. And then also, how does then one not become so immersed in this like narcissism and self-absorption?
Exactly.
It's like a fixation of my life to like, I want to attain this Nafs Mutma'inna or this actualized self, and I'm dealing with trauma my whole life, and it just becomes
Yes.
very nafsani.
It can totally be nafsani and very consumptive. And that's the problem. This work needs to be framed in a way that you actually cultivate compassion, not only for yourself. That's good. I encourage that. But when you talk about I'm on a healing journey and this and that, and you're like people are calling out, you're toxic, and someone talks one thing makes one, shares a little bit about the relationship, let's cut them out. That's super toxic. It's like, well, you don't know anything, it's like it's just very childish. You can tell when people are like, okay, they're just learning the language and they're empowering that very the shadow, just that nafsani kind of impulsive, hypercompensated kind of thing. You can tell they're there and you can recognize that. And a good therapist will know exactly where they're at and be able to take them through those stages if they're willing. Oftentimes they check out because, oh, you're not meeting me. You're not seeing me as I am and honoring me. And there's a lot of that language. And for example, a lot, even yesterday I was talking to a friend and he's also in a similar space and he has homosexual Muslim patients. And that's a very tenuous dynamic there, and I'm not going to get into it now, but it's like they want to be accepted as they are fully. And they see the classic Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah hukum on acting on homosexuality as oppressive. But they long for identity and connection to the community, their community, they're Muslim. But they're like in this fixed binary. It's like I long for connection, but basically Islam as it stands is oppressing me, and I want it to change. And are you, as my therapist, willing to acknowledge that? I mean, it's just really, you know, and it's like at some point, it's like you have to take off your practitioner hat and be like, look, I mean, this is like we're talking about kufr now, you know. I mean, it becomes very tenuous. So, anyways, the balanced person, the balanced practitioner can recognize all of that immediately in their people. And if you're doing work and you're not cultivating sympathy and compassion for other people, like as broken as I am, and as well-meaning as I am underneath all of my strategies, I can't see that in other people and give people a break and cultivate husn al-dhan while still being able to call out things as they are, while still having husn al-dhan with people, knowing that people are not their actions. If you're not working on that and cultivating that as a muscle, you're not doing therapy right. As a rule, if you can't see people's humanity through your own humanity, if you can't see people's brokenness and their inner strength underlying that brokenness through your own accessing of your strength through your brokenness, if you don't mirror that into the world, you're deluded in this bubble. And that's what a lot of um, this liberal healing kind of language and narrative and structures foster this egocentrism, which is just more nafs. It's nafs upon nafs. It's like that you don't really leave the nafs world. You're just stuck in the nafs. Where we're trying to get people out of the nafs. We're trying to get people to understand the whole nafs. Like I would reflect that back on them. So that person, um, that's a homosexual that wants connections, I would explore that. Like that seems like you're putting yourself in a binary there. You long for connection, and yet you're putting these conditions. And it's like I want to change a whole deen. Like like you're an ethnic Muslim. Like you know what that means, right? You want to change a whole deen? Like is that what you expect for you? I'll say that in a different language, of course, but like I'll just reflect that back. Like, is that what you're saying, basically? you know? And it's like you have to reflect people back, but it has to be done beautifully and with compassion and invitation. Like when I get people like this, I say, "Ya Allah, like you're testing me. Like, can you love these people and guide them in a beautiful way, not push them away? Like they're coming to you and they're saying, I'm Muslim and I want a Muslim therapist, but I'm like openly gay and acting on it. And I mean, every time they come, like, oh Allah, you're testing me. Like, can I do this beautifully?
Mm.
You know? But yeah, there's a lot of self-absorption. It's a function of the nafs, and it's just a matter. For me, I see it as just bad therapy. We're not the whole narrative is off. The whole paradigm is off. People don't recognize what's nafs and what's qalb anymore. So that's why earlier at the beginning I kind of defined it, because it's important to get things right and define things properly. As much as we can, this is appropriate. This is a podcast, but inshallah, yani, when I'm teaching, I get really into it. Like you need to know this. And there's a lot of unlearning, even with Muslim therapists. For example, the Cambridge Muslim College Some Psychology program, a lot of unlearning. And it's good. And people wrestle with their demons because like it's they've attached to it. This is what's real. And alhamdulillah, it's a blessing to be able to be part of that. But just to speak to, the question, absolutely. And I'm on to it. I'm always on to it. And I'm also very critical of these new coaches coming out with I mean, they're not doing their work. Sorry. They're not doing it's obvious to me they're not doing their work. And they're not trained. So like two big red flags because they're just getting coaching things. I know coaches that are rigorously trained, but they don't want to go and do the 2-year counseling thing, but they're rigorously trained. And if that's real and true, and I can feel that they're balanced, I'm okay with that personally. I'm personally okay with that. If you've done your inner work truly and you've been rigorously trained, for example, in like a somatic trauma institute, like in like 2, 3 year programs, I'm cool with that. But people that just do online coaching, they pretty much just apply for it, and then maybe do a little bit of like onboarding online kind of 5, 10, 20 module thing. And there's no testing or anything. There's no supervision. And then you're just giving a printed or PDF certificate and then you're on your way. This is pretty bad news for that person. It's just a bad news for that person because they're going to hurt a lot of people
Mm.
and it's on them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mazen. This is why
Allah.
it's so important for us to have these ongoing conversations to bring awareness to these things.
Mm,
And I've heard you say, which I really enjoyed, since I'm also a word person, is that the etymology of the word health
mm,
it comes from the meaning of wholeness and
mm,
holiness. And
mm.
that's really beautiful. And so that's what we're trying to
MashaAllah.
establish is to enlighten people to a way of wholeness and holiness.
I mean,
So I do hope that we can reconnect on a discussion about the temperaments based on Untitled Chapter
mm.
inshallah in the future. And I thank you so much for your time and wish you and your family well.
Thank you very much for having me. An honor.